The Seattle Mariners just swept the Pittsburgh Pirates. They took down the monster of Paul Skeens. The Pirates offense was held to a whole 0 runs this entire series. A historic pitching matchup on Sunday, and the Mariners came away the victors. We're going to talk about this series, just how good the pitching staff was, and how there was just enough offense. We're then going to talk about the 4 All-Stars that have been selected from the Mariners to travel to Atlanta for the All-Star game next week. We'll talk about Eugenio Suarez and Carlos Santana, maybe a 2022 reunion, at this trade deadline. I'll give you my Operation Overreaction, and we'll wrap it all up by talking about the New York Yankees series starting on Tuesday. Thank you guys so much for watching episode 206 of the Hit It Here podcast. Shout out the Seattle area code. Part of the Bleav network, available on all your favorite podcasting platforms. Be sure to leave a 5-star review. What are you pointing at? You're messing up the intro. Be sure to leave a 5-star review, like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. And this is the Gabe and the guy that hugged me at the game the other day, whose name I didn't get. He just ran up. He's like, Colton! Hugged me. He's like, dude, love the channel, bro. I'm like, hell yeah, brother. Like...
And that was that. I was making sure that you remembered that there was people that you needed to say, because I forgot about it until we were about halfway through the intro. I'm like, oh my God, who are the people? I remembered Hug Guy. I did not remember Gabe, so that's my bad. My bad,
Gabe and Hug Guy. It's your guys' episode. Joe, we're feeling pretty good here on it. Well, I don't feel very good. But in terms of the mojo of Mariner, right, of Marinering, feels pretty good right now.
A sweep at home, a 5-2 incoming trade offer. You get vintage Mariners performance. The opposing team scores 0 runs. Seems like a pretty sweet deal to me. Yeah, the Pirates were winners of their last 6. They swept the Mets like recently. They weren't playing bad baseball. Yes, they are a bad baseball team. Their offense has been very poor so far in 2025. Holding a team to 0 runs scored over 27 innings of work is no easy feat. Yes, it is the Pirates. I don't care, though. This is an accomplishment that should be celebrated. A 6-0 victory in the first game. Cal hits 2 homers in this one. Ties Ken Griffey Jr. for most home runs by a Mariner before the All-Star break. He still has 6 games left to maybe make history, but a game that felt like you set the tone, and I say that a lot, but 6 innings, no runs, obviously, because we've spoiled the outcome of this series. No runs were scored against the Mariners pitching staff in this series. But 6 innings, 3 hits, 2 walks, 8 Ks for Bryan Woo, cementing his all-star selection that we'll get to in one of the middle topics today. But a good first game after a disappointing end to the Royals series that you started off on the right foot against the Pirates.
Yeah, great work from Bryan Woo. Edward Bizardo came in, struck out 3 in 1 inning of work, and Trent Thornton threw a couple of innings in this one. It just felt like that's how you had to start a series versus a team that you needed to win the first 2 games against because you were going up against Skeens on Sunday. And for what it's worth, the Mariners did that in the first game. I will say, watching Dylan Moore hit that home run was just so funny. I was like, this guy is so incredibly bad. He's like struck out in like 25 of his last 35 plate appearances. And he's like, nah, I'm going to hit this one out. Smile, Omega smile. But that continued for the Mariners, at least on the pitching side of things, into game 2, where the Mariners took this one 1-0 on the back of a 7-inning performance from Luis Castillo, striking out 8, only giving up 2 hits. Yeah, the Rock was back, baby. Great recipe. Luis Castillo to 1 inning of Brash to 1 inning of Munoz, and Munoz looked electric in this one. Ben Williamson driving in the only run in this game with a double to right field. Not a whole lot to talk about in this game, to be honest with you. That's what we needed to see out of this team.
Yes, the offense did not look good. There's a couple things you could point out. Julio, bases loaded, strikeout on like a 94-mile-an-hour fastball. Like he's getting beat by that pitch. Not good. You can isolate those things and you can point them out, and it can be frustrating. Sometimes you get a runner on third and you pinch hit Donovan Solano, and then he grounds out to the third baseman instead of hitting a sac fly. Like there could have been more opportunities for runs to be scored. That run does come in regardless, But what is important to me in this game is seeing the recipe that it feels like the better teams of this last decade, for the Mariners specifically, of like the 2022 and some parts of the 2023 team, where you get a 7 inning pitching performance out of your top line or front end starter, or one of the top end starters on your team. You get 7 innings out of them, you turn it over to the setup man, and you give it to the guy in the ninth. That is blueprint success for a 1-0 victory or a 1-run win in recent Mariners history, something that we haven't seen a ton of this year or even last year, I don't think. I mean, there's a handful of times, but specifically thinking about this year, the starting pitching hasn't been able to go as deep. Yes, Munoz has been electric. Matt Brash has been very good, if not even more electric than Munoz, because 20 straight appearances or 19 straight appearances without giving up run. Like, both had incredible stretches of pitching. Being able to see both of them in action on the end of a Castillo start feels like exactly what the doctor ordered. Yes, the offense was not great. Sometimes that does not matter, and that's what I think makes this team so dangerous, and is when they're playing at their best, or they don't need to have the offense every single night. It's nice when they do, but when you get a night where you go 7 innings from your starter and you throw the ball to Brash and Munoz, it's game over. And especially against a team like the Pirates, whose offense has been pretty poor. That one was wraps as soon as Castillo finished that 7th inning.
This was a series that we saw quite a bit in 2024, but in 2024, the Mariners' offense wasn't as good. Now, granted, the Mariners' offense isn't great, but it's better this year than it was last year. And the Mariners winning a game 1-0 is something that we're kind of used to at this point. That went on into game 3. Paul Skeens on the mound versus George Kirby, a generational pitching matchup. Kirby might face off against Tarek Skubal in the Tigers series, so sure, why not, right? In this game, of course, Paul Skeens, 5 innings pitched. He struck out 10, did give up 5 hits. There was an interesting play at the plate in this one with JP Crawford getting thrown out by an unreal throw from O'Neal Cruz. Randy didn't tell JP to slide. JP probably should have slid anyway. Like, there's just a lot to talk about with that play. JP actually had a pretty bad game. He did go 1 for 4 in this one. Julio Rodriguez 1 for 4. Dom Canzone 3 for 3 with 3 singles, hitting nearly 300 now. But the big at-bat came from Randy Arozarena, hitting another home run, his 6th home run of the homestand, catapulting himself into like a 130-something WRC plus. Like, Randy has been so good, but really today kind of is on the back of George Kirby's 6 1/3, giving up 4 hits and 9 strikeouts, Joe.
This is the George Kirby that we know he can be. And I think he himself would agree. And this is what you need out of a guy like George Kirby, where you don't know how missing the start of the season is going to affect him. You don't know how, random poor starts are going to affect him. Seeing a start like this and coming off the heels of, his last start out against Kansas City, 6 innings, 3 hits, 1 earned. Minnesota, 6 innings, 3 hits, 1 earned. 3 starts in a row where George is giving you at least 6 innings of 1 run or less. That's a very, very good sign that he could be back to more of the form that we expected out of George Kirby. The George Kirby that led the Mariners pitching staff in F4 last year, that didn't feel like it should be the case, but was. This is the kind of pitcher that we know he can be. It's not nearly on the same level as the Angels start where he struck out 14. Of course, that was, an anomaly. But 6 1/3, 4 hits, no earned, 9 Ks. That is a very, very good George Kirby start, and definitely warranted the big ovation from the crowd and all the players running in, patting him on the back when Dan took the ball away from him in that 7th inning as soon as a base runner did get it on. But George led the way. Randy broke the tie. I said it on stream. I don't know if you were in there when I mentioned it, but Randy his slugging has raised 50 points. The homestand. It was 395 in the final game against Texas. Homestand for 7 games, it's now 446 or 444, something. It basically 50 points. He has been on a heater. His home runs over his last 15 games, 6. Home runs over his last 7 games, 6. Like, he has just turned into an absolute monster, courtesy of Jake Raise the Trident and East Coast M's, obviously on Mariners Rundown on Jake's podcast, talking about we need to see a bit more pop out of Randy. Well, there you have it. A series sweep where you don't allow an earned run, and a run regardless, not even earners, a run in general. A very welcome sign for this Seattle Mariners baseball team, where some teams around them are scuffling. The more important team, not so much. All right. Dare I say their name? But there are other...
The Astros.
Yeah, heck 'em. The official Mariner Mojo heck you list. At the top, the Astros. Second, Chris Guccione. Like...
I thought you'd like that.
Yeah, that was good. I wish that if there was an easy way to compile a heck you list, I think it'd be a fun thing to do throughout a season or something. But the way that the Mariners are playing right now, go 11-6 over a 17-game stretch with no off days, that feels that is a good sign to me that they can withstand some tougher parts of the schedule, but also that they're, on top of that, is going to be, maybe is a bit of a stretch. Better things are to come. There's going to be reinforcements. They will add at the deadline, like being 6 games over, heading into the All-Star break, right before you have to play 6 games against the Yankees and the Tigers. Like, you are guaranteed to at least be 500 heading into the All-Star break, which is, I think, where the Marine Layer guys probably had them at, because I remember they posted something about how tough the schedule was and how important the Royals and Pirates series were because of that. I just think the additions will come, and with how the pitching staff has looked, and if those additions are on the offensive side, this team will have a better second half than they've had first half.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement with the road that's coming up. Obviously, like you mentioned, the 17-game stretch of no off days. It was a pretty grueling one. I mean, the fact that the Mariners had to face some decent teams in there, but they got their butts kicked a few weeks earlier by probably the easiest stretch that they had prior to the All-Star break, and then they come back and they go 11-6. That's huge going into a couple series versus some very good teams in the Yankees and in the Tigers, but we're not going to talk about that just yet. We have an All-Star game to talk about, and it was announced on Sunday that 4 players, not just Cal Raleigh, but 4 total players would be making the All-Star team. We have to talk about it, Joe. Julio Rodriguez over Randy Arozarena. I think that you made a really good point during the stream, talking about how, you know, these were all sent in votes by the players and by like management and whatnot. Those had to have been sent in obviously well before today.
Yeah.
And they had to have been sent in probably before Randy went on this torrid stretch, because if you look at Randy's numbers before this stretch that he's on compared to now, they're not nearly as good.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, that didn't feel like you were passing it to me. My bad. The thing that I find interesting is, one, if Julio, say, has cooled down in, say, the last week or so or 10 days, the numbers that he was showing when those votes were likely getting polled and tallied or whatever probably reflected that of an American League All-Star in the outfield, a notably weak crop of players. George Springer has gone nuclear. Randy Arozarena has gone nuclear. Like, Joe Adell was on a 15-game hitting streak. Those 3 guys, had they done that stuff in June, middle of June, maybe, that's probably the latest that's the latest that they probably could have done it, is middle of June, where those stats would have mattered in getting those players. Notably Springer, I think, is the biggest snub in the outfield when you look at relative to performance and what Julio looks like next to George Springer. It's just, it was like too little too late as far as getting the all-star nod. There's still a chance that they can be replacements. I think Randy could still be a replacement. I mean, even JP could still be a replacement. Sorry, my dad's outside. Scared the shit out of me. And even Joe Adele, if the Angels need someone to be named an all-star, right? I don't think Julio is not necessarily deserve. Like, it's a great thing. It's a very positive moment. A three-time all-star in his young career. Whether or not fans want to admit that he's a good baseball player, that's fine with me. But don't badmouth him for being selected by his peers. The other players in the game that he is playing selected him to the all-star team. What does that say? He earned his right onto that team. Are there other players that are just as deserving and there's going to be snubs? Of course. But the all-star game, it's the all-star game. What's a bigger name in baseball? Julio Rodriguez or Joe Adele? Julio Rodriguez or George Springer? Julio Rodriguez or Randy Arozarena? Like, there's a time, like, if this is 5 years ago, sure, Julio's not in baseball and George Springer's, on the Astros. That's not the point. Was he on the Astros in 2020? No, probably not. Doesn't matter. That's a long time ago. My point is, you don't need to discredit Julio's success and this opportunity for him because other people are also deserving. Like, so a reply to your tweet of the stat head, whatever, is like, they aren't mutually exclusive. And I think that's a very good thing to note. Is like, yes, Randy deserves to be an all-star. Doesn't mean Julio doesn't, though, at that same point.
George Springer got going late. Mike Trout was hurt for a while. Like, there's plenty of guys that are deserving, but it might just be too little too late. And as they go through and do replacements like you mentioned, then we might see those guys get selected, which is where we might see somebody, because I think Jeremy Pena was selected. They're going to have to replace him on that. Mm-hmm. Could that be with J.P. Crawford? Could he join Brian Wu, Cal Raleigh, Andres Munoz, and Julio Rodriguez at the All-Star game in Atlanta? I think absolutely, which would tie the Mariners for the most All-Stars in all of baseball with the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Tigers have 4. The Mariners have 4. The Dodgers have 5. You mentioned Randy Arozarena, Joe. I know that we need to talk about reliving the 2022 days, but I think this is a better segue to my Operation Overreaction really quick. With the stretch that Randy is on, you have to look at his contract. You have him obviously the rest of this year. You'll have him next season in ARB 4. He'll probably make, I don't know, we'll call it $15 million, right? Mm-hmm. Do you look to extend Randy Arozarena, and what would it cost? I think you do. Now, Randy's a bit on the older side. He's 31. So you have to take that into account. What's he going to look like if you were to extend him? It wouldn't be a long extension, right? I think this coming off season, if Randy, he doesn't have to be on this torrid of a stretch, obviously, but if he just puts up numbers like we're used to seeing from Randy Arozarena, I think the Mariners offer him a 3-year, $50 million deal for Randy Arozarena. It would buy out his last year of arbitration, and then you'd have him for 2 more seasons after that in left field. That gives you time to kind of do in the outfield. That gives you time for Johnny Farmelo to make his way through the minor leagues and see if you have anything there. I think that Randy is a guy who really likes wherever he plays. He loved it in Tampa. I think he loves it here. He obviously interacts with the fans day in and day out. Nobody is more interactive with the fans than Randy. And I think that he's a guy that's very easy to love on this team. A bit of good faith from the Mariners, because we saw them do it with Luis Castillo. They extended him shortly after they got him. I think they should do the same with their second biggest trade acquisition over the past probably nearly decade and extend Randy as well.
You mentioned good faith. Like, I think Robles as well is part of that conversation too, of like, you played well enough in our pitcher's haven to warrant, we put some trust into you. I think 3 years 50 might be a little on the cheap side for what it would cost. I would think, because especially with his age, that being a pretty big factor, whatever he signs, he won't probably get another big payout. You know what I mean? If he was, say, 28 and you signed him to a 4-year deal, he's still 32 by the end of that. You could theoretically cash in again if he's still playing well enough. If you extend him now for 3 years, he's going to be 33 or, like just a year past that. But I think that he would want a little bit more because he knows that it's going to affect his next contract after that. I think you could go like 4 years. I think you probably have to pay him at least 20 million. I think you probably have to go like if it's not, I think it's somewhere in between the 3 years 50 and 4 years 80, where I could see him seeing it be worth it. The hard part is getting him to stay, given like maybe like he looks at it from the view of like what his market would be, where he continues to play well this year. They need to do it this offseason if this were to happen. You can't wait until the middle of next season, because if he continues to play well, there's 1 foot out the door, because you're probably not going to be able to pay him what he thinks he's probably worth at that point. I could be wrong in that assumption, but and also in the same vein, he could go back to being just a 2-WAR flat player instead of being past that mark already in half the games, right? He's already eclipsed his 2025 or 2024 full season value in just 87 games so far this year. He's playing like this is the highest WRC plus of his career since 2019, like where he only played 19 games. Of course, that can drop down. Do I expect him to continue to have a slugging of over 1,000 in the month of July? No, I don't, because that's very unrealistic. I do think it would be worth something for the Mariners to take a look at, and would be worthwhile. It does create a small logjam, I think, but one that is probably okay if the guy is continuing to put up consistent 2020, 120 to 130 WRC plus seasons. It gives you a bit more flexibility with some of the prospects that you're calling up, or the ability to trade some of them. Extend Arena does make sense. I think I get it. I don't think they do it though. I like as unfortunate that it sounds, I guess, like it's one of the few players that you bring into T-Mobile who does seemingly play better, or just like doesn't, I guess, falter in that moment. I don't know why. I just can't picture the front office getting it done, if that makes sense. And I hope they prove me wrong. I think Randy's a fun player to have on your team, but I do think he will hit free agency in 2026. Or at the end of 2026.
In terms of extending pitchers, right? What are you going to do to extend Logan? What are you going to do to potentially extend George? You'll have Bryce, you'll have Brian Wu for a few extra years after that, so you don't have to worry about that just yet. Depending on obviously what they do in the draft will kind of depend on what they look for extension-wise. If they go with Ava Arquette in round 1, like, do they feel comfortable with Sloan and Sanja being the replacements for George Kirby in a couple of years? I'm not sure. I think that them paying Randy Arozarena $20 million, I agree. It seems unlikely. Randy also seems like the kind of guy, though, that if Tampa would have offered him like a 3-year, like $15 million deal, he would have taken it.
15? $5 million a year?
$5 million a year, because
Crazy.
He loved it there that much. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
Now, obviously, that's an incredibly big hometown discount. But, I mean, if it was either that or get traded, I think he probably would have taken the $5 million a year, because he knows how bad Tampa Bay is at keeping their players. So,
yeah.
I want you to do a thought experiment with me really quick.
Okay.
All right, close your eyes. Picture this.
I have aphantasia. I can't. I can't see things when I close my eyes.
I don't speak Italian.
Like, tell me to picture a red apple. I can't.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. You really learn stuff about your best friend when you do a podcast with them. You know what I mean?
206 episodes, by the way.
All right, well, open your eyes, I guess, and picture
I'll close
this.
them. It's for the bit.
J.P. Crawford, okay, batting leadoff. Cal Raleigh, batting second. Eugenio Suarez, batting third, okay. Then you have some combination of Randy, Julio, Polo, and then you have Carlos Santana hitting for you as well. We are bringing back the glory days, Joe. Picture that lineup with me. What do you think?
Feels like a wild card berth with a trip to the American League Division Series at the least. Bringing back Gino, bringing back Carlos Santana. They brought back 95 with Dan and Edgar. Can they bring back 2022 with Gino and Carlos Santana? Bring back Paul Sewald too. I don't care. Get it done. Get it done.
Yeah, I think that now there is some merit to this. So obviously we've talked plenty about Gino. He says he doesn't want to leave Arizona. He also said he didn't want to leave Seattle. Doesn't matter what he says. If he gets traded, he gets traded, and I don't see why the Diamondbacks would want to keep him. He is going to be an all-star. That definitely doesn't help lower his trade value, the fact that he was named an all-star. But nonetheless, it was noted, I believe on Sunday, that the Guardians plan to trade Carlos Santana, who, when you look at his numbers, isn't having a fantastic year. Joe, if you go to Baseball Reference and you look at Carlos Santana's numbers, when he was traded from the Royals to the Seattle Mariners, he had a 97 OPS plus. If you look at his numbers this year, he has a 97 OPS plus. It's happening.
It's written in the stars.
It's written in the stars. Obviously, Luke Raley's done a great job over there at first base. If they want to keep running him out there, I'm comfortable with that. But if you can get Carlos Santana to maybe be the right-handed guy at first base and then be a DH for you, if Polanco's more comfortable playing, second base or whatever over the next however many games, I think that it makes a lot of sense to bring back Carlos Santana. We know the Mariners wanted him in the offseason. He was literally he was a day away from putting pen to paper with the Seattle Mariners when the Cleveland Guardians called him and said, "Hey, you want to come home?" And he said, "Yes, absolutely," because that's where he started his career. Now they're going to trade him. Pardon my French, but what assholes? You know what I mean? They're going to trade him. And I think that where else would he go but back to Seattle?
The hard part I have imagining some of this stuff, aside from my aphantasia, is the way that the roster fit kind of breaks down. Like, and again, this doesn't matter. Your team gets better. You figure out ways to get guys at bats and get guys innings. But if you trade for Carlos Santana, Donovan Solano's off your roster. I know. Like, war is over. Like the ding dong, the witch is dead kind of a vibe. If you trade for Eugenio Suarez, what does that mean for Ben Williamson? What does that mean for Cole Young? If you are trading for both of those guys, what does that mean for the two rookies that have come up? What does it mean for Dom Canzone? There's questions that have to be answered, but the overarching answer to all of those questions is: do Gino and Carlos Santana make your team better than a combination of Donovan Solano, Cole Young, Ben Williamson, Dominic Canzone, Miles Mastrobuoni in the here and now? Of course. So, yes, there's going to be probably a hard... Like, I don't know. Is it as simple as DFA Dylan Moore and DFA Donovan Solano? Is it as simple as that?
And then, so obviously Williamson just goes down, which is kind of what we expect to happen at the deadline anyway. You have Jorge Polanco playing second base versus lefties, right? So Cole Young sitting the bench. You have Carlos Santana at first base. You could go with, you could even keep Donovan Solano in that situation, right? And have him DH versus lefties, or Santana DHs versus lefties, and Solano plays first base. I don't know. Versus right-handed pitching, Jorge Polanco is your DH. Carlos Santana sitting the pine. You have Luke Raley at first base, Dom Canzone in right, and Cole Young at second. Now, am I ready to relegate Cole Young to a platoon role? Absolutely not. But if it makes his team better and it gives them a better chance to make the playoffs, then that is what the Mariners have to do. I don't care if Cole Young has to get less at-bats if it means the Mariners make the playoffs. Yes, I want to see what Cole Young has over the long haul, and frankly, I think we will. But I think a move like this is a team that is trying to win now. Sure, you're adding some older guys, right? We know that Santana's old. All right, we've talked about this a million times. He's this year's Justin Turner. I saw somebody say that Julio needs his emotional support DH. That's what Carlos Santana is. Think about how good Julio became once Carlos Santana got there, right? Eugenio Suarez bringing the good vibes back. We've talked about it plenty of times. His defense over there isn't going to kill you, and his offense is going to be more than worth the upgrade. This makes the team that much better, and I think that these are the kind of moves the Mariners will be looking to make, because frankly, if you go get Eugenio Suarez at this deadline, I think you may have acquired the best offensive player available at the deadline this year again. I think that what we should do is before the deadline, we should have Aaron on, and we should talk about, what would it cost? What does he think it would cost?
Sure.
Get a Diamondbacks guy's perspective on what it would cost for the Mariners to make these trades.
We're just going to steal Jake's guy like that?
That's right. Jake hasn't met him in person. We have.
Owned.
So, true. The interesting part with Naylor is obviously he's just a left-handed hitter, right? So it's like, do you prefer the platoon? Because that's just Luke Raley.
Sure.
You're just getting Luke Raley again.
Yeah.
So it gets a little muddy there.
Yeah. So that was funny. Like, he's just a left-handed hitter. That's all he is. That's all he does. He swings the bat left-handed and then goes home. That's all he does.
That's right. I mean, yeah, kind of. Yeah, it'll be interesting because, like you mentioned, the Yankees are a team that are interested in the services of Gino over there at third base, which I think makes a lot of sense. Obviously, they had the injury to, who was it? Cabrera earlier this year?
Well, that, but also Jazz
Chisholm, although he's back now, isn't he?
He is, and he's playing well.
Yeah, he's an all-star. But the Mariners are flying to New York to take on the Yankees. Logan Gilbert on the mound in game 1 against Will Warren, right-handed pitcher. Warren has 107 strikeouts on the year, by the way, but a 5.04 ERA. Logan, we know, what he can do in the big moment, but this Yankees team has gotten to him a little bit. Jazz has a home run off of him. Anthony Volpe has a home run off of him. The Yankees lineup's hitting pretty well compared to a Mariners team that hasn't really seen Will Warren at all, obviously, because he's young. I don't know. I feel about as good about this matchup as you possibly can. The way that the rotation works out for both teams is heavily favored in the Mariners, camp. But, of course, it's Yankee Stadium and that Yankees offense.
Yeah, anything can go when you go to Yankee Stadium. I will say, Warren's ERA prior to his last start was 4.37. He then faced the buzzsaw in Rogers Center, that is the Toronto Blue Jays, in a mopping. 4 innings, 10 hits, 8 earned. That ballooned his ERA almost a full run, from 4.37 to 5.02. So, I think Warren is a better pitcher than that ERA states. Water bottle moment. The strikeouts, I think, are a telltale sign of that, and it's beneficial to the Mariners that you do get Logan Gilbert, I think, in that matchup against Will Warren. Like, of the 3 starters that we face against the Yankees here, I think he is the strongest, and that, in that same vein, should bode well for the Mariners. Of course, that's never how things end up working out necessarily, because it's the Seattle Mariners Baseball Club, but you are also catching the Yankees at probably their most vulnerable point. You're catching them at a good time. They're 3-7 their last 10. They've lost the stranglehold on the American League East. The Blue Jays, who are 9-1 in their last 10, have taken over sole possession of first place. You're only a game back of the Yankees and the Rays, but you're playing the Yankees. You could take over them in the wild card standings if you win this series.
Will Warren in Seattle earlier this year, he got a no decision. In 5 innings pitched, he gave up 4 hits, 2 earned. He did hit 1 guy. He walked 1, but he struck out 9. 92 pitches, 53 strikes. Warren's going to be in the strike zone. But, I mean, he's a guy that you can find your walks against. In the month of July alone, I'm sorry, that's not true. Yes, in the month of July, he walked 4 in his last outing. He's a guy that he's going to be in the strike zone. I'm fumbling. He's going to be in the strike zone, but if you're able to work counts against Will Warren, you might be able to find your way to first base, Joe. Moving on to game 2, by the way.
In the month of July, where he's pitched 1 game.
I forgot how early it was in July. Anyway, game 2, Logan Evans takes him out in his first Yankee Stadium start versus, how do you say his name? Cam
Sure.
Schlitter,
Schlitter?
Schlitter. I don't know how to say
I
his
would
name.
assume Schlittler.
He's making his MLB debut. Evans. I don't think he faced the Yankees earlier this year. I could be wrong though. He did not. So two teams haven't seen either of those pitchers. Could be a toss-up. I mean, Evans has pitched very well. I feel comfortable with him going to pitch in Yankee Stadium, but at the same time, again, it is the Yankees. That short porch in right field. Schlitter,
Schlittler.
however the Schlittler,
Or maybe
you know,
Schleitler, I guess. I don't know.
he might come into this game, make his LB debut and shock the world like Jacob Mishkri. You know what I mean? Like,
Listen, you can't just say the Pirates reliever's name from today.
Blagosgzi.
We're really good over here. Really good stuff.
Mark Arzapachinski.
There you go.
Anyway, how you feel about game 2, Joe?
Good, man.
Great.
The Yankees have a 4.65 team ERA. I think that's what that said. 4.69. Nice. So that's 22nd in all of baseball. The Mariners over that same time span, they went 11-8 over their last 19. Had a 3.41 ERA. The Yankees went 6-13 over those 19 games. So like the pitching has kind of come off the tracks a little bit, going off the rails. Warren, again in game 1, seen a debut in the second game, and then you get Marcus Stroman, who, if he's pitching well this year, news.
He has a 7.45 ERA.
News to me after the offseason that he had of I'm not a reliever, I'm not a pitcher in the bullpen. Buddy, you sure as hell look like it. 5 games, 19 innings pitched, a 7.45 ERA. Yankees are down bad, and this is the time where you could. This is not the same team you played earlier in the year. You should have an opportunity to continue to build upon what you've shown in the last 17 games, going 11-6.
On May 13th, Brian Wu took on the Yankees here in T-Mobile Park. He went 6 1/3, gave up 4 hits, 0 runs, with 6 strikeouts. With how good Brian Wu has been, obviously just named an All-Star, this is going to be his last start before the All-Star break, which puts him in line to pitch in the All-Star game, by the way. I feel very comfortable with this start for Brian Wu specifically versus Marcus Stroman, who ideally the Mariners offense should be able to take care of. Now, over the past couple of days, the Mariners offense has been hardly there. But in a hitter-friendly ballpark like Yankee Stadium, the Mariners are a pretty left-handed heavy team in terms of, Luke Raley, Dom Canzone. Like, your big boppers are kind of left-handed. Cal. This series is going to be about not letting Aaron Judge beat you, which is what we said last time, and they let him beat them. And for the Yankees, it's about not letting Cal Raleigh beat you. Mm-hmm. We have one of these two guys is going to be the MVP this year, more than likely. It is going to be a battle of the Titans between these two teams, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. But that's going to do it from us here on episode 206 of the Hit It Here podcast, the Seattle episode of the podcast. Appreciate you guys watching this one, and go Mariners.